Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast. Today we're going deep, deep into the life and career of a true music legend. So Paul McCartney, you know him, you love his music, but get ready because I think you're going to learn some fascinating things about this guy, things you might not know.
Yeah, it's incredible to think we're talking about someone who has been at the forefront of popular music for what? 6 decades. It's unbelievable. But what's really captivating to me is how he's managed to constantly evolve, experiment, reinvent himself, while always staying true to his core musical identity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's rewind the tape here, way back to Liverpool where it all began. And picture this, a young Paul, practically a kid, teaching himself piano, guitar, songwriting. I mean, it's almost like he was destined for greatness right from the start.
Well, there's definitely something to be said about natural talent, of course. But I think we have to remember the influence of his environment. You know, his father was a jazz musician. So Paul grew up surrounded by music, and he was exposed to all these different genres from a really young age. And that kind of early exposure can be so incredibly formative.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's like having a musical playground. Right in your living room. And speaking of formative influences, let's not forget those early rock and roll legends who really ignited Paul's passion. Little Richard, Buddy Holly. I mean, their energetic performances and just raw talent clearly left a mark on his style. You can almost see their influence in his stage presence and that signature McCartney energy.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so fascinating how he took those influences and blended them with his own unique musical sensibilities. Think about his bass playing, for instance. It's melodic, inventive, dynamic. It's not just about keeping the rhythm. It's about adding another layer of musicality to the Beatles' sound.
That is such a good point. Yeah. His bass lines are almost like another lead instrument weaving in and out of the melodies. Now, speaking of the Beatles, I mean, we can't talk about Paul. But they're mentioning that little band. That took the world by storm.
Oh, absolutely not. The Beatles story is one for the ages. And Paul's role within the band is particularly intriguing. You know, he wasn't just a songwriter or a musician. He became a driving force in their creative evolution, especially after Straight Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. That album marked a real turning point, this deliberate move away from their earlier pop sound towards something more experimental and psychedelic.
It's really incredible how they managed to constantly push boundaries and redefine what popular music could be. And within that whirlwind of creativity, Paul's songwriting truly flourished. We're talking about some of the most iconic and enduring songs in history. Yesterday, Hey Jude, Let It Be. I mean, these songs have become part of our collective musical DNA.
I know. They really have. And it's just remarkable how they resonate with people across generations. Those melodies, the lyrics, they tap into something so universal, timeless, about the human experience.
Absolutely. If you're loving this deep dive into Paul's musical universe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. The rest of this incredible story. But back to the Beatles for a sec. You know, those early days, Paul was often labeled as the cute Beatle, which is kind of funny considering the depth and complexity of his songwriting. It's a good reminder that there's always more than meets the eye.
There really is. And I think that's part of what makes him so fascinating. You know, he can write a tender ballad like Yesterday and then turn around and create a rocking anthem like Helter Skelter. He embraces that duality, the ability to move between different moods and genres so effortlessly.
Oh, he really does. Now, as the Beatles' journey came to an end, Paul didn't just rest on his laurels. You know what I mean? He formed Wings with his wife Linda and Denny Lane, and they became one of the most successful bands of the 1970s.
Yeah. Band on the Run, Live and Let Die. Those were massive hits, dominated the charts. And it's interesting to see how Paul once again reinvented himself, creating a new sound while still staying true to those melodic sensibilities.
And let's not forget his incredibly prolific solo career. I mean, the man has been touring consistently since 1989. That's dedication and a real testament to his enduring passion for performing. But, you know, beyond the music, there's another layer to Paul that's equally fascinating. His dedication to philanthropy. He's been such a vocal advocate for animal rights, opposing seal hunting, campaigning against landmines, and promoting vegetarianism. It's like he sees music as a platform to make a positive impact on the world.
It's a really great point, and it speaks to his deep compassion and a sense of social responsibility. You know, he's not afraid to use his voice to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. What's fascinating is how this activism is so intertwined with his personal values.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how someone's personal beliefs can translate into action, inspiring others to do the same. And speaking of a lighter side to activism, did you know that Paul was once convicted for growing marijuana on his farm?
Huh. Yes. The infamous marijuana farm incident definitely raised some eyebrows at the time, but when you think about it, it could be seen as like an early manifestation of his environmental consciousness.
Right, like maybe he was just ahead of his time,
Yeah.
exploring more sustainable ways of living. Okay, so we've talked about Paul's musical journey, his activism, even a little bit about his personal life. But there's so much more to uncover. I think we should take a closer look at his artistic evolution, how his songwriting changed over time, the collaborations that shaped his sound, and the innovations that pushed musical boundaries.
Absolutely. There's a whole world of musical exploration waiting for us.
And before we dive into that, let me remind you to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future deep dives. We've got some incredible stories lined up for you.
Now back to Paul. One thing that always strikes me about his songwriting is how he manages to capture such raw emotion while still crafting these incredibly catchy melodies. It's such a rare combination.
I know, it really is. And it's evident throughout his career. From the early Beatles hits to his later solo work, there's a vulnerability in his lyrics that resonates deeply with listeners, making them feel like they're not alone in their experiences.
Exactly, and that's the power of great songwriting. It creates a connection, this shared understanding that transcends language and cultural barriers.
Absolutely. Speaking of connections, Paul has collaborated with some of the biggest names in music throughout his career.
Oh, absolutely. Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, Elvis Costello, the list goes on. And it's fascinating to see how each collaboration brought out different aspects of his musical personality.
It's like each collaboration was a new adventure, a chance to experiment with different sounds and styles. And speaking of adventures, there's a unique story about Paul that I think you'll find fascinating. In 1972, while traveling in Scotland, he was arrested for growing marijuana on his farm.
Ah, yes. The legendary marijuana farm bust. It definitely caused quite a stir at the time.
It did. And you know, it's a little ironic considering his later advocacy for marijuana decriminalization, but it's just another example of how Paul has never been afraid to push boundaries and challenge conventions.
That's so true. He's always been a bit of a rebel, willing to go against the grain, stand up for what he believes in, and that rebellious spirit is definitely reflected in his music.
Yeah, it's there in the experimental sounds of Sag Peppers, the raw energy of Wings, and the introspective lyrics of his solo albums. He's always pushing himself creatively, exploring new sonic landscapes, and challenging listeners to expand their musical horizons.
That's what makes him such an enduring artist. He's not content to rest on his past achievements. He's always looking for new ways to express himself, to connect with audiences, and to leave his mark on the world.
Absolutely. And we're going to delve even deeper into that artistic journey in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore the evolution of his songwriting, the impact of his collaborations, and the legacy he's created as a musical innovator.
It's going to be an incredible journey through the world of a true musical icon.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back to Tell Me More. Before we went to our short break, we were talking about Paul's constant drive to explore new creative avenues. And I think it really speaks to his insatiable curiosity.
Yeah.
And just his refusal to be pigeonholed.
Right.
As just a pop musician.
Right. It's almost as if he sees creativity as like this boundless playground. And he's just determined to explore every corner of it. And we're not just talking about music here. Remember that animated film he created, Rupert and the Frog Song?
Oh, yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? The same guy who wrote Hey Jude also brought this whimsical animated world to life. It's such a testament to his versatility and his willingness to step outside of his comfort zone.
I know. It really shows that creative energy can flow in so many different directions. Yeah. And it's not just animation either. I mean, he's dabbled in classical music with the Liverpool Oratorio and even composed a score for the New York City Ballet.
It's almost like he's saying, there are no limits to what I can create. And that's incredibly inspiring, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It makes you want to tap into your own creative potential and see where it leads. But let's get back to his music for a moment. I think one of the most fascinating aspects of Paul's career is how his songwriting has evolved over time.
It's interesting how you can actually trace his personal growth and changing worldviews through his lyrics. The early Beatles songs were often filled with this youthful optimism and sense of romantic idealism. But as he matured, both personally and musically, his songwriting became more introspective, exploring themes of loss, longing, and the search for meaning in a complex world. Think about songs like Let It Be or The Long and Winding Road. There's a depth and a maturity to those lyrics that really reflects his own life experiences and the changing times.
And what's amazing is how those songs written decades ago still resonate with us today. They speak to these universal human emotions that transcend time and cultural boundaries.
That's the mark of a truly great songwriter, wouldn't you say? To be able to capture those raw, honest emotions in a way that connects with people on such a deep level.
Absolutely. And it's not just his solo work that reflects this evolution. Even within the Beatles, you can see a shift in his songwriting as he began to take on more complex themes and experiment with different musical styles.
Oh, definitely. I mean, think about Yesterday, which he wrote entirely on his own. This beautifully crafted ballad that stands in stark contrast to the band's earlier, more upbeat pop tunes.
And then you have songs like Eleanor Rigby and She's Leaving Home, which tell these poignant stories about loneliness and alienation in modern society. They're almost like mini-movies set to music.
It's incredible how he's able to create these vivid characters and narratives within the confines of a pop song, and it's a testament to his talent as a storyteller as much as a musician.
It's almost like he's painting these sonic pictures with his words and melodies, drawing the listener in to these rich, emotional worlds.
And speaking of drawing listeners in, Paul has always had a knack for crafting incredibly catchy melodies, I mean, can't help but sing along, to songs like Hey Jude or Let It Be.
I know, those melodies get stuck in your head for days. And it's that combination of catchy hooks and heartfelt lyrics that makes his music so enduring.
It's like he cracked the code to writing songs that are both commercially successful and artistically satisfying, which is a rare feat in the music industry.
It really is. Now, we've talked about the evolution of his songwriting and his uncanny ability to craft catchy melodies. But I think it's also important to acknowledge the role that collaboration has played in shaping his sound.
Oh, absolutely. Paul Hall has always been so open to working with other artists, and I think that willingness to collaborate has been crucial to his creative growth.
Yeah, he's worked with everyone, from Stevie Wonder to Michael Jackson to Elvis Costello. And each of those collaborations brought something so unique to his music. It's like he's constantly seeking out new sounds, new perspectives, new ways of approaching songwriting.
Think about his collaboration with Stevie Wonder on Ebony and Ivory. It's a beautiful song about racial harmony and understanding, and it just perfectly blends their two distinct musical styles.
It's a real testament to their mutual respect and their shared belief, the power of music to bring people together. And then you have his collaboration with Michael Jackson on Say, Say, Say. I mean, that's pure pop magic.
Yeah. It's such a fun, infectious song, and it shows how Paul can move effortlessly between genres. He's not afraid to experiment, to try new things, to step outside of that comfort zone.
And I think that fearlessness is part of what makes him such an enduring artist. He's always evolving, always pushing himself, always looking for new ways to express himself creatively.
He's a true innovator, and I think his willingness to embrace collaboration has really been a key factor in his success.
Speaking of innovation, let's talk about some of the specific techniques Paul has used in his music. He's not just a songwriter, he's like a sonic architect, always experimenting with new sounds, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the studio.
You know, one of the things that always fascinates me about Paul is his use of unconventional instruments and sounds in his recordings. He's not afraid to use everyday objects to create these unique sonic textures.
Like in the song Yesterday, where he used a string quartet to create that haunting, melancholic atmosphere, or in Blackbird, where he used a tape loop, a birdsong, to create that ethereal, otherworldly feeling.
It's those little details that make his music so special. He's always thinking outside the box, looking for new ways to create something unique and memorable.
And it's not just about the instruments he uses. He's also a master of studio techniques, using multi-tracking, tape loops, and other innovative methods to create these rich, layered soundscapes.
Think about Strawberry Fields Forever, which is just a perfect example of his experimental approach to recording. I mean, the song is a collage of different sounds, textures, tempos, all seamlessly blended together to create this psychedelic masterpiece.
Thanks, like he's taking us on a sonic journey, leading us through all these unexpected twists and turns, always keeping us guessing what's coming next.
And that sense of surprise and discovery is part of what makes his music so engaging. You never quite know what you're going to get. But it's going to be interesting.
Speaking of interesting, I think it's time we dive into a particularly unique and fascinating aspect of Paul's life, his journey into the world of activism.
It's amazing how he's used his platform to raise awareness about issues that he cares deeply about, and it's inspired countless others to do the same.
He's not afraid to speak truth to power,
Yeah.
and he's always willing to stand up for what he believes in.
And what's remarkable is how he's managed to do all of this while staying true to his musical identity. He hasn't compromised his art or his message, and that's a testament to his integrity and his unwavering passion for making a positive impact on the world.
And now we're going to delve deeper into that world of activism, exploring the causes he's championed, the challenges he's faced, and the legacy he's created as a voice for change.
Get ready for an inspiring journey through the heart and mind of a true musical icon.
Stay tuned for more. Welcome back to Tell Me More. As we start to wrap up our deep dive into the life of Paul McCartney, I think it's important to revisit that question we posed earlier about his most impactful contribution to the world. It's a question that could spark endless debates, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's almost impossible to separate the threads of his multifaceted career. His music has undeniably shaped the soundscape of generations. His activism reflects this deep-seated compassion, and his personal journey is filled with all these lessons about resilience and reinvention. But if I had to pinpoint his greatest contribution, I'd argue it's his ability to inspire. He shows us that one person, armed with passion and purpose, can truly make a difference.
I love that perspective, and it's so true. He's not just a musician or an activist. He's a symbol of creativity, peace, and a generation that dared to challenge conventions. I mean, think about it. His music has soundtracked some of the most significant cultural moments of the past century. From the youthful energy of Beatlemania to those introspective ballads of his later work, his songs have resonated with people across generations.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is how his songwriting has captured those universal themes of love, loss, hope, the search for meaning. These are emotions that connect with people, regardless of their background, beliefs. He gives a voice to those shared human experiences, making us feel seen and understood.
Absolutely. And that's what makes him so relatable, even for those who weren't alive during the height of the Beatles' fame. His music transcends time and cultural boundaries, speaking to something deep within us. And then there's his activism. I mean, he's used his fame to amplify causes close to his heart, advocating for animal rights, peace, environmentalism, inspiring countless people to take action.
Yeah. It's incredibly powerful to see someone use their platform to make a positive impact on the world. He's not afraid to speak out against injustice, challenge the status quo, encourage positive change. That's true leadership.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He's a shining example of how one person can make a difference, using their voice and their influence to create a better world. And I think that's a powerful legacy to leave behind.
It truly is. And it's a legacy that will undoubtedly continue to inspire generations to come.
Well said. So as we bring this deep dive into the extraordinary life of Paul McCartney to a close, we want to thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. We've explored his musical genius, his unwavering activism, and the personal experiences that have shaped him into the icon he is today.
And we hope that this exploration has left you with a deeper appreciation for his artistry, his compassion, and the profound impact he's had on the world.
Remember, we're always looking for new and fascinating stories to tell, so be sure to subscribe to Tell Me More Stories Told, this podcast for more captivating deep dives into the lives of extraordinary people.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the music playing.